welcome to the So Essential vlog. I hope you're all well. I'm here today to do a Q&A session with you. So a couple of weeks ago, lots of you left questions that you would like answered by me, and I'm going to run through those today and share my thoughts with you. This can become a regular feature if you want it to. We want to interact with you. We want to be giving you the content that you're looking for. So if you'd like to continue and you have questions and you didn't put one down last time, or you have more questions and you did put one down last time, that's fine. Leave your questions in the comments below, and in a few weeks time we'll pick those up and we'll answer them again. Lots of people ask this time about fit, which I'm obsessed with, so that's fine. Happy to talk about that till the cows come home. People also ask more general sewing questions as well. They're fine too. You might have some more nosy questions, things that you want to know about how our business started or what our sewing background is, those sorts of things. That's all cool too. So anything that you want to know, put it down and I'll be happy to answer them within reason, of course. I do draw the line at some places, but you know, just go ahead and ask, fire away, and if we can answer them, we will. So I should just mention as well, I just wanted to apologise for my slightly bedraggled appearance this morning. We've had amazing weather here in the UK for the last week, and then the day when I come to work and I've got to do videos and photos, it chucks it down on the school run. So I did make an effort for you guys this morning. I did do my hair nicely, but I'm afraid I'm just looking a bit sort of Russell Brand right now, but you know, I can live with that. I hope you can too. Before I get started, I'll just show you what I'm wearing. It's one of my recent makes, which is New Look Simplicity 1370, sorry, in our scuba print fabric. And then I'm wearing my Lark t-shirt that I made recently and a ready to wear leather jacket. So I just thought I'd share that with you. I've been getting loads of wear out of this skirt. It's definitely a firm favourite. I think it's the third time I've worn it today in May, because I'm doing May and tracking what I've been wearing every day, which I've been sharing on Instagram. So if you don't follow us on there, you can hop on and have a look in our stories highlights. I've shown what I've been wearing every day if you're interested in that. But now let's get on with your questions. So I've got a little list here because I'm not clever enough to remember them all, I'm afraid. So the first one was from Kim Kennedy. Hi Kim. Kim asked, how do you know when to do a forward shoulder and round back adjustment? So this is something I talk about a lot because I do this for everything I ever make. Now they're two separate issues, but they often come hand in hand. Often when people have got a rounded back, their shoulders are forward as well. So the first thing to mention is if you need to do a forward shoulder adjustment, what you will notice is that the shoulder seam on your garments will be too far back on your shoulder at the shoulder end. So the shoulder seam should sit, if you raise your arm and put your finger in your shoulder socket, you'll feel a little dint, and that's where your shoulder seam should end and should be positioned. It should be sort of in the middle of the ball of your shoulder, and it's because it balances the body out then, and it sits and hangs properly if it's in that position. But if you need to do a forward shoulder adjustment, what you'll often find is that on ready to wear garments and the garments that you make, if you don't adjust them, the shoulder seam will be at the back here somewhere, and it'll be off centre, and it might only be a slight amount or it might be quite pronounced, but that's how you can tell if those shoulder seams aren't falling in the centre of your shoulder there. Now a high round back adjustment, which is the one I make, you can tell because the shoulder seam isn't in the right position at your neck. So again, it should be central to your neck. As you look at your neck side on, the shoulder seam should be sitting centrally. And what you'll find is that if you need to do a high round back adjustment, again, that shoulder seam is probably behind the centre point, it's towards your back. And another thing you might notice, which I always used to notice and I never knew what it was until I started sewing and learnt all of this, is that some of your clothes will tend to ride up at the front and sort of fall down your back, and they're almost like cut into your neck if they're a high neck, and you can just feel that your garment wants to move towards the back. And that's because if you've got a rounded back, then you need more fabric to cover that back. There isn't enough there on the standard design, so it's trying to cover, it's slipping back. So that's how you can tell, Kim, if you need to make those adjustments. There are other issues with round backs as well. So some people might have a lower round back or a very slightly rounded back, and you can make adjustments for those as well. But the one that I make is the high round back and the forward shoulder. But all of the information I've just talked about is available in the Palmer Fletcher Complete Guide to Fitting book, which I highly recommend, which is available on our site. And this was the book that really cracked my fitting issues for me, so I'd highly recommend that. And that's got the other types of back issues in there as well. It's also got broad backs and narrow backs and all that sort of thing as well. So highly recommend that, Kim. The next question was from Sally Parkin, who said, do you have any recommendations for fitting trousers? I'm having a mare with most patterns that are fitted. The Marigold trousers by Tilly are about the only ones I have managed to fit straight off the bat. Please help. So the first thing I'd say, Sally, is you're definitely not alone. I know hardly anybody that can get trousers to fit straight out of the packet, because there's so much more going on with a pair of trousers than there is with a top or a dress or a skirt. There's so much more to think about. You've got your waist and hips, you've got your crotch, you've got your legs, you know, there is so many different facets and variations in that area of the body, which is why they are so difficult to fit. And I'm not an expert, you know, I've only made one pair of very fitted trousers, and I was exactly the same as you. I found that quite difficult. But what did help me was an excellent article by Heather Lou, who runs Closet Case Patterns. That's her business, and we sell her patterns on our site. The Ginger jeans and the Morgan jeans are some of her, and the Sasha trousers as well. So she put together a really useful, helpful article, and I think she's got a couple of tutorials actually on her website about trouser fitting and the 14 most common problems that people experience. So a lot of them are to do with kind of the crotch seam, the curve of the crotch seam, whether it's the right depth, also alterations that you make to the inside leg seam as well. And I highly recommend that article. I'll put a link to that below so you can get on and have a look at that. But it's great because there's a wrinkle dictionary with it as well, so it shows you a picture of what the fitting problem is, and then it tells you how to fix it. And I used that with my Eleanor jeans. I found that one of her tips were to treat and got rid of loads of drag lines that I had across the back of my thighs. And yeah, I just think she's really knowledgeable and she offers some really good advice there, and you can apply that to the patterns that we sell, which are available on our site, and the link to our site's below. The other thing is the Palmer and Fletcher guys also do a Pants for Real People book as well. So the cover looks very old-fashioned, but there's some really good advice in there again about how to fit trousers and some of the general sort of concepts around fitting trousers. And then the only other advice I can give is to always make a toile, and really it is about trial and error. It is about, you know, learning to understand about your body and where your issues are and how to fix them. So I hope that helps, Sally, and good luck with the trouser fitting. Let us know how you get on. Somebody called me has had a question. She asked about doing round upper back adjustments and said, did I sew a back seam in order to do this, or did I add neckline darts? My answer to that is you can do a high round back adjustment without sewing a back seam. All you have to do is slash the pattern piece where the neckline stitching line is, and then spread the pattern piece there, and then you can still line your pattern piece up with the fold of the fabric, because you haven't you haven't sort of adjusted the curve of the back batten piece if you slash the pattern there. Now all of that is in my tutorial that I did, which is on this channel, on how to do back and shoulder adjustments. So if you have a look at that, you'll be able to see exactly what I mean there. But there isn't a need to add a centre back seam. I think sometimes people do, but I never do. I've never had to do that because of the way that I do it, which is all demonstrated in that video. In terms of the neckline darts, I haven't added neckline darts, I've added shoulder darts recently, and I've talked about that and done another tutorial on how to do that. And the reason that I did that was because I'd had a gaping back armhole. So at the back of my garment here, the fabric was gaping away from my body, and if you add a shoulder dart, that can eliminate that problem. But also what it does, it's a fix for protruding shoulder blades, and it creates more room in the garment in that area, which sort of is much more flattering across your shoulder blades, but it also makes things a lot more comfortable as well. So both of those things are available as video tutorials on this channel, so you'll find them there. A lady called Jilly Tar asked, she would like to know what hem finish to use for different fabrics. So the first thing I'll say is that your hem finish depends on the fabric type, but also the style of the garment as well. And we wrote an extensive article on this subject on our blog. It was a good while ago, so I'll put the link to that below so that you can jump on and have a look at that. But we talk in great detail about the process you go through when choosing how to hem a garment. But some of the general rules of thumb are, the more flared a garment is, the narrower the hem should be. So for circle skirts, for example, usually you'd do a narrow hem, but for something that's like a pencil skirt, generally you would do a deeper hem on that. Another tip I've got as well, and I always say this with regards to everything, is have a look at the ready-to-wear items in your wardrobe. Have a look at what they've done on those and whether you like it, whether you think it looks nice, whether you think it looks professional, and that can guide you as well and give you ideas. You know, I'm always looking at the way things are made in ready-to-wear garments, because it does give you ideas for how to finish things, not just in terms of hems, but seam finishes and all that sort of thing as well. You've got to question as well, will a visible stitch spoil the overall look of your garment? So on certain things, a visible stitch, say a t-shirt, a visible stitch looks great. It's what we expect to see on a t-shirt. But if you're making a really nice dress, you know, shift dress, and you've used really lovely fabric, actually, would you want to see a stitched hem at the bottom of that? I personally, it's personal preference, I personally would rather hand sew that because I think it looks a lot nicer. And you know, it is very much down to personal preference as well. The skirt that I'm wearing today, it's a casual scuba skirt. Now scuba, I could have cover stitched the hem on that, but I prefer to hand stitch it because I just think it looks nicer. So that does come into it as well. And how professional and high-end do you want your garment to look? That's sort of a bit of a factor in there as well, because if you look at the very, very well-made, expensive garments, most of them will have hand-stitched hems or invisible hems. So, you know, if that's the look you're going for, you might want to do that. But actually, if it's just something for everyday wear, you know, you may well want a visible hem, like the t-shirt I mentioned. I always do a cover-stitched hem on a t-shirt, or like a knit or jersey dress that I might make. And then generally another sort of thing to think about is that bulkier, heavier, thicker fabrics they'll require a deeper hem, because you've got to accommodate that fabric when you turn it up. And also in coats and jackets and things like that, sometimes the deeper hem is needed to help the garment drape and hang properly as well. But some examples in terms of fabric types I could give are jersey and knit fabrics. They normally would be finished with a twin needle on your sewing machine, or a cover stitch if you've got one, and that's just two little parallel lines of stitching. Often sheer and delicate fabrics, people often do a hand rolled hem on those. Denim is often top stitched with a visible hem. Leather and leather look fabrics can be top stitched, or sometimes they can be glued. So again, it is just purely down to personal preference. If I was making a lovely crepe shift dress, I'd probably hand stitch the hem on that. But definitely, Gilly, get on and have a look at the article. I'm going to put the link below because I think that will go into a lot more detail and answer your questions more fully as well. But hopefully that's given you some food for thought and some good ideas. And then Renee Legary said she's new to sewing garments. She can follow a pattern and do the mechanics, but she's completely lost when it comes to adjustments or tailoring to her body type. She asked if there was any suggestions on how to get started with simple adjustments for the bust and waist. Well, in terms of the bust, one tip I would give, if you're going to start getting into fitting and you're prepared to try and learn to make some adjustments and make some toiles, some practice runs, and do a bit of trial and error, one tip I would suggest is, rather than measuring your full bust, which is around here, I would measure your high bust, which is around here. It's like your chest measurement. So the tape measure goes round where your bra strap would normally be at the back, and instead of coming across your full bust there, bring it up and over the top there, and take that measurement, because that measurement will give you a better fit. That the size that you get off that measurement will give you a better fit for your armholes and your neckline than going across your full bust. But then you may need to be prepared to make some bust adjustments based on that. So the best example for a lot of people who are full busted, for example, if they choose a pattern size based on their full bust, if they've got a large bust, they're going to end up making something that's probably a couple of sizes bigger than the rest of their body is, because just because you've got a full bust doesn't necessarily mean you've got broad shoulders or you're bigger elsewhere on your body. You could be very petite but just have a full bust. So that's why I would suggest trying that if you want to try and start making some adjustments in that area. And then you may need to do a full bust adjustment or a small bust adjustment, which is where you either reduce the amount of fabric that's covering the bust area, or you increase it depending on what's going on there. So sometimes I do a small bust adjustment. I wouldn't say I'm massively small busted, but I'm a B cup in a bra, not in sewing, because in the sewing world it's different. But in a ready-to-wear bra I'm a B cup, so I'm not really small. But sometimes the patterns are drafted just too big for me in that area. And then I make a small bust adjustment, and I'm going to do a video tutorial on how to do that. And again, there's some great advice on how to make these adjustments in this book, which I highly recommend, which is on our website, and the link to that's below. But you'll be able to see the tutorial on this channel as well. But essentially what you do is you slash the pattern piece up towards the bust apex and across to the shoulder, and then you also slash sort of down where the dart comes across in a darted top. And then if you're small busted, you overlap those pattern pieces. You overlap the pattern piece there, and you overlap it at the dart as well, and that reduces obviously the amount of fullness in the dart and the pattern piece generally. But then if you're full busted, you spread the pattern piece and you add tissue in to give you the extra width you need to cover your bust. But all of that information, as I say, is in the book, and I will do a tutorial on it as well. In terms of, and there's other bust alterations you can do as well. I'd also say make a toile, so choose your pattern size based on that high bust measurement. Make a toile in some cheap fabric and look at what the issues are, look at where the fit problems are, and then you can start to make your adjustments. And with all of the fitting issues, we all want an instant answer. I used to get so frustrated for years. It took me a long time to really understand my body and what adjustments I needed to make. And I'll still say, there's going to be times when I'm still going to struggle. I feel like I'm very confident. I feel like I've made a lot of headway in that area, but there'll still be things that throw you, and it is just giving yourself the chance to learn, having the patience, because if you can crack it and you can understand those issues, then you know it's so much more pleasurable when you're making clothes that fit you really well. In terms of the waist, it also depends on your hips as well, and the combination of the two. So some of the adjustments you might need to make in those areas are you might need to add some darts at the waist darts. You might need to just alter at the side seams of your skirt or your dress, which is really easy to do. Some people don't need any waist darts at all. Some people might need more waist darts than suggested in the pattern if they've got like a very big difference between their waist and their hips, for example. I quite often have to make a few adjustments in this area. So quite often for me, if I'm making a more fitted skirt, I'll find that things can be a little bit tight across here because I've got quite full thighs at the front, quite muscly thighs, and sometimes I just have to stand in the mirror, put a pin where the problem and the tightness starts, put a pin where it finishes, and then I just let out the side seams slightly in that area, tapering back to the normal seam line where I've marked those points where it begins and ends. So what I usually do is mark those 2 points where the fullness is at its peak. I might sort of mark the seam line out about 1/8 of an inch, say, or 1/4 of an inch, depending on how bad the problem is, and then taper it back to where the original seam line was. And that usually helps me get a bit better fit in that area. But then sometimes I need to take in here because I'm fuller here but I'm quite narrow here, so then I'll do the reverse there and take in the side seams. So yeah, again, it's just a bit of trial and error. And I mean, the side seam adjustments, usually you can make those as you're making your garment. You know, it doesn't always necessitate a toile. I don't ever really make one for that issue because it's fairly easy to do. Another thing you can do, which they do in couture, is you can use bigger seam allowances. So in couture, I know, and theatre and that sort of thing, they'll use 1-inch seam allowances so that they've got the room to play with the different models and the different actors and whatever. So that's another little tip you can try. It just depends what your preference is, really. And then the final question was from Kimberly's Knitting Garden Penny. I'm new to sewing. Would you talk about body shape and becoming styles for shapes? So I mean, there's two schools of thought with this. So sometimes I know there's a lot of people out there that don't like to be told how to dress for their body shape, because, and I understand that, and not in any way am I saying this is how you should dress for your body shape. But Kimberly's asked the question. She would like to know what might be flattering for different body shapes. So personally, I like to think about balance. I like to think about the fact that I am sort of pear-shaped. I have got muscly thighs and I'm probably bigger in the bottom half of my body. So if I wear really tight trousers, for example, I like to wear a jacket or a loose-fitting jumper to balance that out. If I'm wearing dresses and skirts, I like to wear things that accentuate my waist and maybe skim over my legs if it's a fuller skirt. But I think another good bit of advice as well is just to think about ready-to-wear outfits you've got, or outfits you've already got in your wardrobe that you wear and you feel good, and look at them, stand and look at them in the mirror and think, what is it about this that's making me feel good? Is it altering my proportions? Does something with a high waist do me favours and make my legs look longer and make me look more in proportion if you've got a long body and shorter legs, for example? It's all about proportions. It's all about what makes you feel comfortable and what makes you feel good. And also, you can go to the shops and try stuff on and work that out as well. Have a bit of fun with that. Go and challenge yourself as well, I think, to think about trying on different things, trying different shapes, trying different looks. It is so easy to get stuck in a rut. I've been there. I was in a massive rut for years and years of wearing the same things over and over again. And sewing has helped me really to be brave enough to try some different shapes and silhouettes and see what I like. And a lot of the time there's things that I've just been totally missing out on, so I definitely advise that as well. And then also one of the other watchers commented that Justine Leconte has got videos on different body shapes and styling and that sort of thing. She's not really a sewist, but she's more of a stylist and makes suggestions about style. So I'm going to pop the link to that below as well. That's definitely worth a watch. So people have found that really useful, and she actually goes into how to identify your body shape and then what different body shapes you might be and how to style your outfits for those. So that's all of the questions for this time. I hope you've enjoyed that. As I say, please leave questions below. If you've got something you'd like to ask, if you'd like to join in the discussion, we really welcome that. Don't be afraid, go for it, put your question down and I'll answer them in the coming weeks. Everything I've mentioned today that I've said is on our website. Our website's below, and there'll be a link to our blog below as well. So I hope you've enjoyed that. Have a great week, everybody, and I'll see you next time.